If you've ever felt like you're riding an emotional and financial roller coaster as a consultant, celebrating big wins one week and then losing sleep over where your next client will come from, today's episode is going to resonate with you deeply. My name is AJ Riedel. You're listening to the Thriving Through podcast, where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable, and fulfilling consulting practice. Today, I'm speaking with Kyle Mlakar, founder of HireCOS. That's HIRE, capital C, capital O, capital F. S. He is a fractional chief of staff consulting firm. Kyle made the bold decision to leave his role as a company president to start his own practice. And he's incredibly honest about both the victories and the struggles that came with that choice. What I love about Kyle's story is how real he gets about the challenges we often don't talk about openly, like the 3 a.m. wake ups, wondering if you've made the right decision, the difficulty of balancing client delivery with business development, and yes, that revenue roller coaster that keeps so many of us up at night. But Kyle also shares some incredibly practical strategies that have helped him build stability in his first year. He talks about finding the right business partner using a simple 3-step vetting process. He talks about why setting aside 20% of your monthly revenue can be a game changer for your financial peace of mind. And he talks about the specific tools and systems he's testing to solve the age-old problem of keeping your pipeline full while serving existing clients. If you're just starting out as a consultant or you've been at this for years but still struggle with the feast or famine cycle, Kyle's insights are going to give you both a validation that you're not alone in this journey and some concrete steps you can take to build more stability into your practice. Let's dive in. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Kyle Mlakar. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
AJ, great. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Excited to be here today.
Well, we'll start right out with, I have a couple questions I like to ask all my podcast guests. And the first one is, what was your path to becoming a self-employed consultant?
That's a long answer, probably, to a great first question to get us started. Um, I think it was the culmination of a lot of different chapters of a career that, like, if you think of a career as a book, there's a lot of different chapters, probably a few different anthologies in there. So it's really been this evolution around various roles that I've had at different companies, and ultimately it led me to focus in on what do I enjoy doing the most? How can I do more of it and get paid to do that, which is a kind of essential piece to that. So that was kind of the overarching path to how I got there today.
And what was the answer to what do I most enjoy doing?
I really enjoy helping people get to where they want to ultimately go, or maybe even further beyond what they thought was possible, just by giving them a little nudge, a little coaching, mentoring, but also strategic plans on how to actually block and tackle whatever it is that they're trying to do. And that's what we do at HireCOS, as the fractional chief of staff consulting company.
Okay. I've always wondered, I mean, I've heard of the term chief of staff when it came to like, the White House and politics.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What is a chief of staff in a corporate setting? What does the chief
Great.
of staff do?
Great question. Yeah, we've all watched The West Wing. That's how we kind of think of a chief of staff, right? Blocking and tackling all over the various things that are happening behind that big building. Um, what I have found it to be in a corporate or company setting is someone who lives a role that lives within the ether of an organization. And what I mean by that is it's a role in a position that is able to be amongst the C-suite executives, understand what everyone is trying to accomplish from their own perspectives and what that group is also ultimately trying to do in leading their organization. Take those thoughts and concepts, distill it all the way down vertically throughout the organization, down to the newest employee who just was onboarded within days, weeks, months, whatever it may have been, and be able to communicate what it is that that plan or those items are to each layer of an organization. At the same time, they're able to then cross all various departments laterally within an organization. So we can speak specifically to accounting and finance, operations, sales, marketing, however an organization may be constructed. You're able to then bridge the gaps between each one of those and help everyone move forward with clear focus and understanding around what is the purpose and the intent of what they're trying to do each and every single day, and then how that builds into the bigger picture. I know that's kind of very maybe grandiose. Let's take it from 30,000 feet, and through our conversation, we can distill it down further. But ultimately, that is what a chief of staff is able to do. It's be the synergist of an organization.
I like that, the synergist. I want to go back a little bit to something we talked about when we met earlier. You told me that you had achieved your career goal of becoming a CEO, but
Hmm.
that it didn't work out. So
Hmm.
walk us through that decision. That's a kind of difficult position to want to leave. Walk us
Yeah.
through the decision to leave and how you process that professionally and emotionally.
That's it. Wow, that's a phenomenal question. I'm actually excited to answer this. Yes. At my last company, I started as a chief of staff. I was then appointed as president, and then appointed as CEO in 3 to 3.5 years, I think, was the total time. Um, and I had reached that pinnacle piece. Ultimately, as you said, it didn't work out, and I learned that these things happen. I mean, when you become a CEO of an organization, there isn't much further, obviously, that you can go. Um, but you kind of understand what you signed up for. And we were a company that had experienced incredible growth, an amazing run of success, hitting the Inc. 5000 in 2022 at number 268, 230. We actually bettered the number in 2023, and we finished at 694, I believe, in 2024 once I exited. But with all of that momentum that we had gained, um, we learned a lot of lessons that kind of just came to a head, and it was a natural thing. So when I made the choice to leave, it was that I wanted the work that we had accomplished during that era, if you will, to stand on its own merit. I didn't want anything to diminish what we had accomplished, either as a leadership group, but more importantly, as an overall organization. We had doubled the size of the company. We had built offshore teams in 4 different countries. We had done a lot of things together. And a change like that can have impact in all facets of an organization. Most importantly, it's people. And I just didn't want that to be at all tarnished or negatively impacted. And so I made the choice to say, hey, look, let's let it stand for itself, and I'll exit stage right. Um, and from there, the process was a difficult one. It took a while. I would probably tell you it took almost a year to really understand what that event was like, and to kind of learn from it, to come out on the other side of the tunnel. But more succinctly, I took 2 months off to be with my family, dove into a bunch of projects, um, and then I launched HireCOS. It's time to get back to work. We'll figure it out, and that's kind of how I pushed through it.
What was it like going from that steady executive salary to your first month as a solopreneur?
Yeah. Uh, Another great question, and I'm very happy. I forget the guest's name, but I actually just listened to their podcast with you the other day around severance package. You know, that does help. It builds a little bit of runway, a softer landing, and so I'm extremely grateful for having my past companies support me in that way. Um, it was a change. Thankfully, when we launched HireCOS, uh, I started with two clients in hand, individuals who I had either previously tried to hire at past companies that had gone out and wanted to be entrepreneurs and wanted to then, hey, here's my opportunity to work together to collaborate, or I had been referred to, and we got underway quickly. So that was wonderful. What I then learned later on is if your customers have cash flow, you have cash flow problems. So, which is another podcast that you have hosted early on around putting some of that money aside. That's been a big lesson of mine. So your podcasts have already paid off dividends to me. So kudos to you and your guests. Um,
Thank you.
but yes, there is a change. You're all of a sudden learning you have to go get insurance. How do I get insurance? What's the best way? How's the most affordable and um, also comprehensive to cover you for your family? There's a lot of variables that come into play that all of a sudden you weren't aware of, and you may have taken it not for granted, but just didn't know how necessarily it worked in a W-2 model when you came in versus on your own, and what programs are really out there for your solopreneurs, which aren't great in some aspects, but they're there. They're there.
True. You have a business partner.
I do. Yes.
And you said that finding a business partner was a windfall.
Yes.
So tell
Huge.
us, take us through the story of
Mhm.
deciding you wanted a business partner and finding sort of the right one.
Sure. So I knew early on, if you're going to be a solopreneur and you want to build and grow your brand, at some point you're not able to do it all. You can't provide service and deliverables to clients, meanwhile work on your business, also balance your own life, whatever those things may be, right? So understanding where you wanted to take the business from the beginning, I think helps set the tone of, hey, we need to know that we need to get to these things one way or the other. And one of them was to bring on somebody else so that I didn't feel like I couldn't go after net new business. What ends up happening, or what ended up happening to me, is in the first 6 months of HireCOS, hey, it's great. We got two clients. We're working. We're running full steam ahead. Everything's great. Okay, hey, one engagement ends. Well, you what I learned was I just never had the time, or I didn't make the time, one way or the other, to continue to focus on messaging around business development and moving the needle. Make the problem of having a pipeline a real problem, and it'll work out. There's ways to then message, hey, look, I can't necessarily start tomorrow, but if you give me 30 days, we'll be ready to go, at the start of next month type of thing. Um, I didn't know how to balance that because you're trying to launch a website and a brand, and you're trying to get insurance and all the other things that you're trying to figure out. So I was a part of or I am a part of, I should say, a fractionals um, Slack channel community. And I was invited in by a former colleague of mine, and somebody um, teed up an introduction and said, hey, I really think what you're doing is kind of cool. And I'm a chief of staff of X number of years, and I'd like to help. And I went, jump on board. Let's go. Come on. And so she's been tremendous. She's in Dallas, Texas. Her name is Stephanie Denton, and she's our head of operations and customer success.
So, and it is a formal partnership.
Yes, yes, she is a formal partnership into the company. She handles some of our client work, and is truly a voice of steady when it comes to some of the things that I'm also trying to do as a visionary, as a founder. to build and grow this, and it's a lot easier to do it um, with someone alongside you um, than it is always to do it alone.
Right. I've had some podcast guests that have had negative experiences with partners,
Hmm.
because it is kind of like a marriage. So how did you sort of vet Stephanie and get to know each other so that you knew that it was going to be a good partnership, so it was going to work?
Yeah, a little bit of luck. I'll say there's a little bit of luck, maybe a lot of luck, depending on the person that you speak to. Thankfully, I was on the lucky side. Um, it started first with I wanted to understand. Okay, so from what your perspective is, Stephanie, looking at HireCOS, what do you see that is attractive to you? What are we putting out there that makes sense? That is defining our purpose, our intent of what we are trying to accomplish as a company, not just for ourselves, but of course for our clients and maybe other partners and things of that sort. Our our approach publicly, our profile, what is that telling you? And if she can, communicate back something very similar with alignment of what it is that I am looking for or what I am trying to say, then all of a sudden we've got a pretty core understanding around what it is that we're trying to accomplish together. So that was really number one. I wanted to understand her perspective of what higher COS was trying to do and be. Number two is, given your experience, what do you think the role of chief of staff is? So to your first question, what's your definition of a chief of staff? And hers was very similar. And then third was, okay, where can we take this? I mean, what are the ideas if you were to come into an organization and help build it? Where do your ideas go? What have you thought of that maybe I haven't thought of? Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But where would you want to take this? What are the things that you would want to get into? And if there's alignment there, or, ooh, I hadn't thought about that, then now we've got even more tangible um, aspects to work with together so that we can create together. And we can use HireCOS as a channel to do that. So if she wants to get into, she's an EOS implementer. If she wants to do more of that type of work, okay, let's make that a part of our capabilities and services at additional levels, and let's go after that. That that is not, I'm not certified as that right now. Um, so how do we ingratiate or ingrain what her vision might be into the broader scope? And that's something that those three levels is really what helps cement very quickly um, a great partnership and relationship between us.
I love that. And I want to play that back to make sure that I got the three. So
Mhm.
the first one is you had her give sort of her outside perspective of what her perception was of the company, the mission, where you're going, how you're coming across,
Mhm.
so that sort of her interpretation of you. Then what was the second one?
We defined exactly what her definition of the role of a chief of staff was
Right.
and what it can provide to a company. And then number three was, well, what would you want to do with it? Given the opportunity, given that this were to move forward with a partnership, what would what would you like to see happen? And and that was really the three aspects that we focused our early conversations on.
And that framework worked because you've got,
So far, so good.
how long have you had the partnership?
I think unofficially, officially, we started talking in March
Okay.
of this year, and we launched HireCOS in October of 24. So we're just coming up on our 1 year anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. There's still a little bit of time, so we got to get there.
S- s- So is the business where you expected it to be? So you're about
um,
10 months in.
yeah, you know, I remember talking about this kind of in our first conversations. The answer is yes. I think it is probably where I saw it would be in 1 year. And I think I was pretty intentional around what can we get done in the first year. Um, and then what do we need to make sure that we're starting to work on, not in year two, the work needs to actually start right now, to propel us forward. So my focus now is in preparing for year two, um, which obviously starts coming up here, but you can, hey, you can think about it in October, you can think about it in January, it does whatever. Um, but to answer your question, yes, the business is where it's at. We have learned a lot. And I think that's kind of the most important caveat to your first year, is just to try to be aware of learning as much as you possibly can.
What, looking back, what's the biggest mistake that you've made in this first year?
I would say there's two pieces to it. Number one was the sentiment I mentioned a few moments ago around being reluctant to create a biz dev outreach sales pipeline, to take for granted the fact that you have two clients already and you've got work to do, because at any one moment, based off of contract, those things can come to an end. So that was really number one. I wish I would have started that earlier. Number two is actually a point that again came up in one of your earlier podcast sessions or episodes, excuse me, around putting money aside, taking, I believe someone mentioned 20% of, say, a monthly retainer or whatever your invoice revenue is for that month, and setting that aside. That could offset tax payments. That could offset um, ebbs and flows within a normal business cycle. That would have been my other wish I had done or thought of during the past 10 months.
Okay, good to know. That's good advice for those out there too. Let's talk about biz dev,
Mhm.
otherwise known as sales and marketing, client acquisition. You said business development is your number one priority, but it's also your biggest challenge.
Mhm.
What specifically makes it so difficult?
First is, how, as a solopreneur or founder-led sales team, am I able to reach as many people effectively as a part of my audience as I can? And so you want to get very, very wide, but you need to start at a very small point. All right. You need massive outreach and result from very little. So how do you get as much juice from the squeeze? So you've got to look at some technology, um, and how can you create leads and then get them into a process of outreach to push them through your pipeline, your sales pipeline, however you define it, from stages and so on and so forth. So that's one. The other is bandwidth. How do you balance it all? Where do you find the time? And so um, I've been locked in over the past 6 weeks at looking at how do the pieces of creating this sales biz dev engine, what are the components going to be, and how are they going to fit together, so that I can sit here from this desk, so to speak, and push that as hard as I possibly can with the respectable and appropriate amount of effort, given all the other things that being a solopreneur entrepreneur with a partner creates.
And tell me a little bit more about that system. I mean, in the 6 week
Sure.
period, what are you looking at? Give me some more
Yeah. So
examples or specifics.
well, there's two key platforms that I've been looking at in testing. The first is a lead generation platform, um, called knowledgenet.ai. And I was introduced to them through some networking opportunities, um, with individuals who are hyper focused on sales and biz dev. And so that's a really interesting platform, and I'm excited to kick the tires on it because it creates a very interesting and nuanced way of getting after your primary contacts based off of whatever your ideal customer profile is, but how you get into that nuanced niche of getting that connection made um, through obviously social media platforms, LinkedIn primarily, things of that nature. But how is that data then scraped, organized, and primed to then get into a sales pipeline or CRM type platform? So that's number one. Number two is a new founder-led CRM platform that's coming on to the scene right now called Revo, Reevo. Really interesting platform, has AI components that are coming in. So your meeting note taker is there taking your notes, being your second in command, so to speak. Um, but then transforming those notes into actionable email templates that you can send out immediately, the recordings that come in, setting next steps, not just for your client or whomever you're engaged with on a conversation, but also for yourself. Because much of the time, the most important thing is that you hold yourself accountable to the next deliverable and don't fall out of what, hey, do I owe this person one or this or that? We're in this tech boom where everything is a tool and a help. Well, is it actually helping you or not? This is something that I've really leaned into. And so far, I see it actually removing some of the things that I have originally had in our quote unquote tech stack to help me drive the business. And it's going to eventually take some of those things out and replace. So those are the two main components that I've looked at. How do I get leads created, organized, and primed? And then what is the content, or how am I going to deliver or execute the outreach to those contacts? Um, and I guess a third piece quickly is then content messaging, marketing. How do we create the messages that need to go to those leads? That's the third piece that we're also working on.
Okay. So Revo sounds really interesting. Do you think it is something that would be appropriate for self-employed consultants?
100%, absolutely. And if anybody would like to speak more about it or my experience, feel free to reach out anytime.
Cool. I think I'm going to look at it because it sounds like, I mean, right now, Calendly just added note
Yep.
taking, and which I like, but then I have to download those notes into either my Google Drive or into my CRM. It's not an
Hmm.
automated process. And that's the kind of manual work that we as CEOs of our businesses shouldn't be doing. So this sounds like it's taking, something that technically I could have a VA do it, but I like to do it immediately. You know,
Hmm.
I'm fascinated. Thank you for the suggestion of that. I'm going to go explore it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting to watch tech platforms and companies today solve a unique problem and kind of build back or add on the capabilities of something like a Calendly or an AI note taker like a Motion, et cetera, because those things are built so you know conceptually how to do it yourself. But what they're not doing is kind of the hardest thing. And if you can solve the hardest problem and then add on all these ancillary pieces in and of itself, well, then you have a really full service offering. And so I find companies that are doing that in the tech space very interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about sort of mindset and mental things. You
Hmm.
mentioned that you're extremely hard on yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
As a fellow extremely hard on yourself person, I can totally relate.
Cool.
How has that trait helped? Well, and it's how has that trait both helped and hurt you as a consultant?
Um, it has helped me because I believe that I have and I don't take this for granted. I have a different level of mental endurance um, that I haven't necessarily seen, or I just try to optimize as much as I possibly can, as a quote unquote part of my secret sauce, if you will. Um, so I'm hard on myself in terms of set reasonable, respectful, and accountable deadlines. And one of our values here at HireCOS is relish accountability. Like, I absolutely love it because that means that someone's bought into you and they know, like, and trust you, and so deliver for them, right? And so, from that aspect, I think that our clients, to date, have felt that. They believe that they will always have me alongside them for the ride, and that's the truth. Where it has hurt me is where it has pinned me up against 2 points, and I don't choose to make a decision.
Mm,
Or if I see something like, back, just to use a thread that we've talked about through the podcast, biz dev. If I know that that's not necessarily a problem, I can sometimes focus, well, God, I'm too hard on myself for having let that go, or for too long. I didn't get started. Just get started. To stop worrying about the fact that you didn't do it and start doing it now, and let's not worry about it anymore. And I'm switched my mindset over the past 2 months to be focused on that, versus in the spring I was probably like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So, it's been a little bit of that catch 22.
it sounds like before there was some regret, like, why didn't I do this?
Yeah.
I should have done this. You know, that voice in your head that says you should have or you shouldn't have done something that can be very loud. And you've sort of said, okay, I'm not going to do the shoulds and shouldn'ts. I'm going to focus right here and see what I can get started rather than looking back. You know, the past is the past. You
Yes,
know,
give yourself some grace. I mean, you're going to think of everything when you're going into business for yourself. You're going to do the very best that you possibly can if you're committed to that vision that you have and that passion for what it is that you want to do. Um, but you're not going to get it all. It's going to be okay. Just when it comes back around and you get the next opportunity to lean into it, that's when you need to recognize to make sure you lean into it. Because if you let it go again, then that's another missed opportunity. So just capitalize on the next time.
yep, jump on it. I have
Hmm.
one of my business coaches says action creates clarity,
Yes,
which is
absolutely.
it's a good one for me. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So my kind of default setting, if I'm not careful, would be to continue to work on it. You know, it's not
Yeah.
perfect. I can't put it out. Problem is, if I don't put it out, I don't get any feedback on it. So I don't know if it's any good or not. So
Yep.
I live by action creates clarity. It's good enough, get it out, get some feedback.
We're very similar in this perfectionist type of issue that we're trying to solve for.
Yeah, I love what Brene Brown described herself. She said, I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughist.
I like that. I'm going to steal that one. I like that one
Yeah,
very much.
yeah, it is good. I have another question, and then we're going to go into some of the wrap-up questions.
Hmm.
When I introduced myself to you in our initial call, I talked about helping self-employed consultants with the revenue roller coaster, and you nodded. You kind of resonated with that revenue roller coaster concept.
Hmm.
Describe what it feels like when you're living it.
uh, there are moments of pure ecstasy and accomplishment and joy and success. And then there are the 3 a.m. wake ups with, the night sweats, so to speak. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing? And, you know, the wife, child, dog, like, oh goodness, what have I done to myself and to the rest of my family? So it's all those things in between. What's been interesting actually is that some of the clients that we have, they're entrepreneurs, and some of them are young. Some of them are 10 years younger than I am. And so they've actually, in our partnership and in our collaboration, as part of our kind of leadership syncs that I set up on a weekly basis, um, we've actually turned that dialogue into a help me help you situation. Hey, what are some of the problems that you're having? And so it's helped a little bit. You just get you you don't get numb to it. You just get a little bit more used to it. I'm grateful that I think given my past just work history, and I'm talking more about the length of time that I've had a career and in the various companies that I've worked in and just the different types of things that I've tried to be aware of and observe, it gave me a little bit more of a understanding of what could be. And then when you're in the moment and you live each one of those experiences, those sleepless nights or what have you, they get a little bit easier because you stay on task, you know how to work through it. You've been here before, it too shall pass. There's a great thing on Instagram that I see all the time. It's a bunch of actors sitting around. Tom Hanks is there, De Niro, a couple of others. And he sits there and he says, "The one lesson I wish that I had learned, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. This too shall pass." And so I definitely find those moments, again, possibly in the middle of the night, when I say to myself, this too shall pass.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good, the upsides and the downsides. They both
Yeah.
will pass. You mentioned mental endurance a minute
hmm
ago, and it sounds like you're working on your mental endurance.
hmm
What have you done and what are you doing to build that mental muscle?
Um, First, it's to recognize how was I able to build it up, and that is not necessarily who or what I do anymore. So for a period of time, in my career, I was working full time running a sales team at a freight brokerage in Chicago, 60 hours a week or so. And then I was going to culinary school 20 hours a week, which then extended through other opportunities to make it easily a 100-hour week very, very quickly. I did that for a year. And in that period of time, I think that's where I built this mental endurance trait that I call it. Working in a restaurant and having 300 covers a night versus running your own company as a solopreneur are very different opportunities and environments. And so now it is around my mental endurance is around making sure that I have enough left at the end of the day to go home. I'm lucky enough that I do have an office outside of my home, which I need a dedicated workspace. Um, but when I make the 7 minute drive home, that I've got enough in the tank to be present for my 2.5-year-old daughter, my wife, our dog, etc. Um, and so how do you just block and tackle throughout the day? Take the periods of time that you are highly acute and most into your work, use that as to the best of your ability, and then give yourself a chance to step away, listen to a podcast, um, watch something on YouTube. I don't know, I'm a big visionary visual guy, so I like to watch kind of motivational things there. But it's kind of understanding what does it really mean in terms of your balance now, knowing that you can do quite a lot in a very long period of time.
Where do you see your business in 3 to 5 years?
Where I see the business, and I hope and am working towards the business being, is where we are entrenched in multiple industries. I'm very fervent on the fact that I'm working hard with Stephanie's help to build an industry agnostic chief of staff consulting company. So the majority of my background has been in logistics and transportation. You're going to use that to your advantage to get the door open and
Mhm.
be able to help your blueprint get implanted in as many different organizations as possible. But the reason why I loved bringing Stephanie on was that her background is in completely different industries. So let's open those floodgates up and get there. I would like to have multiple teams of fractional chiefs of staff throughout the country. I am located in Cleveland, Ohio. I have worked at 100% remote companies for the last 5 years, and it's completely doable. So we'll see where where that goes. But I'd love to see some leveling vertically and horizontally within the organization so that we can just serve more clients, more customers, and solve more problems.
What do you think are the biggest challenges you're going to face in achieving your vision?
Um, Continuing to get our name out there, recognized. I think it's always around maintaining profitable focus on financials, making sure we're making the right decisions. We're not allowing things to be experimented for too long. If it needs to be jettisoned, jettison it. And that often comes into certain contracts that you deal with when you're working with various platforms. So just a focus on agility and profitability, um, and just continuing to drive that bandwidth. Let's not rest on the laurels that we learned early on in year one, that we take the opportunity for the clients for granted. Let's continue to just push the needle a little bit further. From there, it'll be making sure that we have systems, processes, and workflows in ourselves, internally, to make sure that we can spin up fractional chiefs of staff, both in terms of what it is that HireCOS is as an entity and what are we trying to do internally, but also then how to execute how we want the job done for our clients and continue to put their own spin on it. So if you take that interview from Stephanie, that we kind of outlined earlier in our conversation today, how do we replicate that? How do we put that into our interview process and our recruiting process and our onboarding? If we're selling process and workflow optimization and talent deployment and strategic planning, we better have process and workflow optimization, talent deployment, and strategic planning. And so I think that that'll be a very interesting exercise for us to dive into over the next 12 months is our goal.
Okay. Yeah. Systems and processes and yeah, very, very important. Okay. Now as we wrap up, I have a couple rapid fire wrap up questions
Cool. Let's
for
go.
you. What's one book, podcast, or resource that's been invaluable to you in your consulting practice?
Ooh, I'm looking at it right now. It's called The Boutique by Greg Alexander. It is a book specifically written and about boutique consulting firms. Um, and it was given to me by someone, um, a networking contact here when I pitched the idea, and he sent it to me. So that would be one book that in this business has been extremely valuable.
Okay. And for those who are listening, I will put the link to that book in the show notes so you
Great.
can find it there.
Cool.
What's one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you started consulting?
Put 20% of your monthly revenue aside. Just because you want to, you believe into it so much, you invest everything that you have into it emotionally, and intellectually, but there is a financial component, right? You're trying to build a company. So how much can I invest of our own assets into the business to make it worthwhile? And you don't want to create too much strain for yourself, because although it is a factor of stress that is completely solvable, financial stress, there's nothing like it. Not to say that that's where we are completely, but I wish that I had had that nuance, and I think we would have made different buy decisions around certain pieces of tech, or we would have structured agreements and details in different ways if I had made that kind of a pillar of how we are going to operate the company in an early stage.
Wise advice. Okay. Last and most important questions. How can listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about your work?
Uh, that's a great question, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do so. You can find us at www.hirecos.com. I am relatively active on LinkedIn. So you can find me either on our company LinkedIn page, or my personal page, for Kyle Mlakar, and that's spelled Mlakar, which is always a fun Slovenian name to bring about. Um, that's the best way to get a hold of me. And quickly, my email is just Kyle@HireCOS.com.
Wonderful. And I will again put all of those into the show notes as well. So, Kyle, it has been a delight to have you as a guest today. Thank you so much. And that is a wrap on this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. And for all of you, keep thriving through. What struck me the most about Kyle's story is how he transformed what could have been a devastating career setback into the foundation for a thriving consulting practice. When he left his president role, he could have wallowed in regret or played it safe. Instead, he gave himself permission to take 2 months, process a transition, and then get back to building something meaningful. The partnership framework Kyle shared, asking potential partners to reflect back your company's mission, define their understanding of the role, and share their vision for growth, that's gold for anyone considering bringing someone into their practice. And his honesty about those 3 a.m. moments, that takes courage to share. But it's exactly what so many of us need to hear. Here's what I want you to take away from this conversation. The revenue roller coaster is real, but it doesn't have to define your entire consulting journey. Kyle's simple practice of setting aside 20% of monthly revenue, his commitment to not neglecting business development even when he's business busy, and his willingness to invest in tools and systems that actually solve problems and save time. These aren't revolutionary concepts, but they're the building blocks of stability and predictable monthly income. If you're struggling with feast or famine cycles, remember Kyle's words: give yourself some grace. You're not going to think of everything when you go into business for yourself. But if you're committed to your vision and willing to learn from each setback and challenge, you can build something that works. You can connect with Kyle at hirecos.com, HIRECOS.com, or find him on LinkedIn. I'll put those links in the show notes along with the information about the tools and resources he mentioned. Until next time, keep thriving through.